essentially we build chatbots which give access to, say, rural, like people in rural India, which give access to them information about government policies and things that they may not be aware of. So which essentially like increases access to justice. Now, most of these models are now built on open source models, OpenAI or whatever. Now the thing is, the problem I see is that I can go and create a website and essentially have false information, and I mean we're all aware that the internet is not correct most of the time. So how do you see us tackling this problem, especially when it's things like access to justice? When you're talking about like the government sort of adopting AI and to sort of get citizens to have access to, say, its policies and all. How do you see? Does there have to be regulation around it in terms of like the kind of data that has to be scraped or not scraped, or does it have to be supervised learning only and we do not use open source models? So just generally, how do you see that going ahead in terms of policy? And conversely, can even private organizations have some sort of policies or checks that you will not use certain, you have to pass certain sort of a threshold in terms of quality, in terms of data scraping, the kind of data you're scraping? So yeah, just generally, how do you see that?
It's a really, really good question, and I think the first thing I would say is that the horse is out of the stable. People are using what they can get, and to be controversial, sometimes something's better than nothing. In a world where there is no understanding or no provision, and hopefully, with your help, it sounds you're very much engaged in this area, we can build the tools that enable people to access information in a way that they can understand in their native tongues, and to have themselves that insight, to be able to empower people to utilise government policy in this example by generative AI, really summarising it for them so that they can access that and utilise it. And that is my hope. I recognise all of the challenges that Felipe and Sherry have set out, and they are real. However, it's like the internet. We can't put it back in its box. So therefore, let's try and be positive and utilise this great, powerful technology to create the level playing field, to create some good in this world. I firmly believe that if enough of us are working on those problems, that we will come to some solutions.
By the way, I also agree that sooner or later we're going to come to most of the solutions, and that's exactly what also Bill Gates concludes. So I would say he says nothing will stop this, and there will be solutions. So I think he answers both questions as well.
Very quick one here, if I may. Christine, you identified some brilliant use cases for AI and access to justice. I mean, the barrier you hinted at is the lack of a business case for the startup going to investors. How are we going to make $1 million doing this? I'm sure you have some ideas of how to monetize such a product. I'm probably not going to talk about them here. But is there a role for public funding in this, particularly given that the clock is ticking on your own LawTech UK project, which I believe is 6 months left to run?
Yes, you're absolutely right, Michael. And so we are currently, the project is to conclude in April 2025. So, we are at speed trying to ideate and develop and convene the people who will provide the solutions. And I do think, and I have said this often, that government has a really important role to play in this. We are fortunate, very fortunate in the UK, that our government has indeed invested in this to date. And my hope is that the either through LawTech UK or through another means, and whichever is the right way forward, but to continue to invest in the provision of solutions through technology for people whose needs currently are unmet, and because of that unmet needs have really significant negative consequences for them and for our society.
And I will just say that in the US, I mean, one of the things that I'm working on and have been working on with the New York government is funding nonprofits to create models for nonprofits, right? To fill that gap that Christina mentioned. And there is an appetite for it. And they are interested. And I do think that there is government funding out there. And when I talk to legal tech companies that don't have the nonprofit aspect to it, and Christina brought this up, I went to Legal Tech New York, Legal Week in New York last year, and I went to sign up, and there was nowhere for somebody to write that they're a nonprofit or that's the type of law that. And I went up to the provider and I said, well, it was ALM, and I said, you need to have this. Like, I understand that this is focused on the firms and those that have money, but the nonprofits are another part of this that's really important. And most of these companies are now looking to create departments that focus on nonprofit and creating the technologies for nonprofits. So it is out there, and I think it's important for us to continue the conversation and to remind the companies that are creating the models that governments have a lot of money to spend.
Well, guys, I think that we covered it all. Thank you for being here. Sorry for the extra minutes, and hopefully we will continue working on it.